is bad, but whatever. We'll leave it as is for now. So let's see. They have S tier, A, B, C, D, and then um what should I call these characters? That, I guess. We'll just call it that because they suck. Okay. So to I guess give sort of an explanation of how I'm going to be sorting these characters. Um, this is going to be sort of a combination, like a split half and half, right? Where it's these are characters, these are the rankings of characters that I love their visual appearance, their character design, just how they look in general, but also like another part of it is I enjoy like their combat style or their utility or how they are in game, like their mechanics, right? Um oh yeah, that is true. I kind of do need a don't have section, right? Yeah, that is true. Okay, let me add row below. Okay, what color do I go for? It needs to be a bright color, right? So, because it went from like yellow to green, maybe blue? This color? No, no, no. What am I doing? That stays the same. This right here, setting. Uh, blue? Yeah, we'll do blue. We'll set it as this. Okay. And then this will be the don't have. Okay. So these are gonna be my rankings of like half waifu husbando, half their utility in game and their usefulness and their enjoyability in game. Okay, so first albedo. I do not have albedo. Now, if I did have albedo, I think I would place him in either C or B tier, personally. Probably leaning more towards C tier. He's an okay character, pretty good for what he does, but I don't necessarily care for him too much. He's in don't have. Alloy, I mean, everyone has her. She's kind of copium. I mean, like, okay, here's the one good thing I can say about Alloy is that, or Aloy, I don't know how you pronounce her name. Uh, the one good thing that I noticed from like very briefly playing with her on my team is that like her skill generates a very nice amount of cryo energy particles. So I feel like if you were to use her for funneling cryo energy particles to a cryo DPS, that would be fantastic. But otherwise, meh. So I'm gonna put her in D tier. Yeah, D tier. Okay, Amber. Amber, Amber, Amber. I like Amber in regards to her personality, her characteristics, how she is designed. But unfortunately, she is not a very useful character in game. So because of that, it impacts my overall rating of her. I think I'm gonna probably throw Amber in the sucky tier, the bad tier. And don't get me wrong, I like her design. She's very cute, very nice personality, but she just like she's so bad in game. Like there's no good utility that she has uh, that can redeem her from this sucky tier. Barbara, um, I think I'll throw Barbara up in C tier. The reason why is because her design is pretty decently okay. I like it. The issue is that one, um, Barbara like she had that whole voice change thing, right? Like where the voice actor re-recorded lines or whatnot in a different tone or pitch or whatnot. Um, that was not, yeah, that was not really something I was a huge fan of. I felt like it didn't really need to change. Um, on top of that, so I think that for early game content, when you like just get into Genshin, you just start playing, you start building up your account, Barbara is fantastic for keeping your team alive. and you know, uh, increasing your survivability out in the open world. Um, so I put her in C tier solely because of her early game use, and also, if you are lacking hydro appliers, she's not the greatest at it because she requires that whoever you're using as like your on-field character, your on-field DPS or whatever, she requires that, you know, whoever that character is has to be basically a melee character. Like, you could get away with using a long range DPS character with her Hydro application, but like using her with Ganyu is kind of copium, for example. So, yeah, she is the I think the definition of mediocre in terms of character. Beto. Uh, this is gonna be hard. I think I'm gonna put Beto in A tier. Okay, so here's the thing. I don't use Beto. I don't normally play her, and obviously I don't have her built properly. Like almost all my characters are not built properly. But I love Beto's like character design. I love her visuals, just like her personality, her characteristics. It's amazing. I mean, you didn't hear this from me, all right? This is not something that came out of my mouth, but she has mommy vibes. That's all it is. Okay, moving on, moving on. I didn't say anything. Um, she's just great visually, and from what I understand of people that do play her and do invest into her, she can be insanely super strong when built properly. So she goes in A tier for me. Bennett, my boy Bennett. I mean, is there even anything to say about him? Like, automatic S tier. This dude literally carries your account for like almost every single content. Like, even once you reach endgame, once you get to like, floor 11, floor 12 in Spiral Abyss, he's still on your team. He's still there. He's still the Giga Chad that provides attack bonus and healing. He is literally like one of the goats of the game. He is legendary. I will say, like, I don't dislike his design, his character design. There's nothing bad about it, but like I do feel like he could have a better outfit. Like he could dress up with better gear, adventuring gear. But then again, I can't really complain. Chongyun. Um, I think I'm gonna throw Chongyun in D tier. And I don't know. I think this is because, you know, I've used him a little bit just to like get his friendship level up and everything. I also, leveled him up and ascended him. Um, Chongyun, he's good if you want a character that can supply cryo infusion for your entire team. The problem is there are like rarely any teams that need him or that like really want him. Even if you were to talk about permafreeze teams, like you will rarely ever see I think a Chongyun on there because you normally have an Anemo character, two cryo characters, and then you usually have like a shield character or a healing character, some kind of support character. Um, Chongyun could be one of the cryo characters, but the problem is that like you would want a cryo character that can funnel particles into your primary cryo DPS, which means that like, you know, your Chongyun would be there to supply particles and nothing else. Like you would not focus on using his skill or his burst. I mean, you could use his skill just to get that cryo infusion, but I feel like that takes away time. And if you are doing something like Spiral Abyss, timing is very important. If you're doing overworld content, doesn't really matter at all. So I think that his character design is pretty neat. I don't hate anything about it, but he's just like I don't know, he's kind of bland in my opinion. He doesn't really offer too much, you know? Um, Supply cryo infusion to DPS Bennett for reverse melt. Yeah, so that's the thing. Like, you would have to have a C6 Bennett for that DPS Bennett team to work, and you would need to use reverse melt for that to work. And I feel like reverse melt teams are not as common, not as standard in the game as other teams. So I'll put him in D tier. I would say at most Chongyun might go up to C tier. Um, but I'll leave him here for the time being. Diluc. I do not have Diluc, which is I'm not really upset about it. Like I think that Diluc is a pretty neat character. I don't have any issues with him at all. I think the main downside to Diluc is just that one, uh, he got power crept by other Pyro DPS characters, and two, um, he requires a hydro application user or hydro applier, sorry, like Xingqiu. Basically, I would say that he essentially needs Xingqiu to be able to like compete with the more higher end, OP DPS characters, right? Um, but he's still a strong character. He's not bad. I'm not saying he's bad. Like, if you have him and he's like your only Pyro DPS character that you can invest into, go ahead and invest into him. He's a solid choice. It's just that unfortunately at this point in the game, he's been power crept by other stronger DPS characters. Um, yeah, I think in terms of character design wise, he's really nice, really neat. Um, Basically almost everyone in the game that like has come up with a nickname for him. I'm pretty sure the most common one is like he's known as the Batman in the Genshin universe, right? Because he's like sort of a vigilante, goes off on his own to explore the abyss creatures and whatever, kind of learn more about them, gather intelligence, all that fun stuff. So he's a cool character. I don't mind him. I think if I did have him, I'd probably place him in like B tier. I'd say he belongs in B tier, right? But that I don't know. Again, I don't own him. Diona. Diona is an interesting support character. Um, I personally don't really enjoy Diona. Like, I think that I think it's primarily a case of just her character design. I'm not a huge fan of it. It's not really my thing. The whole, sassy, tiny little Neko character. It's just, yeah, I don't know. It's not something I really vibe with. So I'd say like, you know, okay, based on her utility though in the game, I'd have to throw her in A tier for utility because like she is yeah, she is basically a cryo version of Bennett, just like less broken than Bennett is what I would say. And she can provide a pretty decent shield as well as some okay healing as well. But obviously she requires investment. And I feel like the only time that I would really use her personally is like if I was running a cryo centered team, like a permafreeze team or something that would require a cryo support character. But like I don't know, like I don't know if she's really ideal for like melt compositions or reverse melt compositions. I mean, I'm sure that people use her for that, right? But like, meh, she's okay in my eyes. She does her job well, and that's all she does. Just she does her job and nothing outside of that. Outfit redesign? Yeah, I do agree. She's lacking some drip, you know. She could use a cleaner outfit, I guess. Um, so yeah. Eula. I do not own Eula. Surprise, surprise. Um, the thing with Eula, I like her character design, her personality, characteristics, all that fun stuff. I like her visual appearance. However, the one major flaw that I find with her, like I think there are a couple of things that I'm not a big fan of with Eula, but I think the number one, aspect of Eula that really stands out as something I'm not a big fan of is that she is a Claymore user. And I said this earlier in stream, but I'll say it again. I like as a person, I do not enjoy using Claymore characters. I feel like their um their play style, their combat mechanics and their attacks are very clunky and very like I don't know, they're just not smooth to me, right? So I'm not a fan of Claymore characters in general. The other thing about Eula is that I think I also mentioned this previously in the stream. She requires super, super high investment, like even more so than other top tier 5-star characters do. And essentially, there's this running joke with people who, kind of talk about Eula, where they say that even if you have a properly built Eula, um, most of the time, Eula users are kind of lacking a bit with crit rate. And what ends up happening is that like they go into Spiral Abyss and their main way of tackling the content is like, you know, try and clear the floors. If you don't end up hitting a crit attack on your burst, restart the run. That's kind of like the joke about Eula that people in the community like to utilize. Um, so yeah, just like it's essentially her combat mechanics that I have a problem with. I would say like okay, assuming that you can build up a very powerful, very like optimal Eula, um, she could easily go up into S tier, easily, right? Um, but it requires heavy, heavy, heavy investment. Um, I would say that like if you had her at mid-level investment, like mediocre, she'd probably be around the B tier or A tier at most. Like she wouldn't touch S tier. But that's just my opinion. Yeah, yeah, very true. Um, Fischl. Okay. Fischl is a character I kind of feel like Fischl is, yeah, I don't know. To me, she's kind of boring and bland. Like, I don't dislike anything about her character design and like how she is, personality wise and everything. I have no issue with it. It's just, it doesn't appeal to me. Like, it doesn't scream out like something that I find to be adorable or funny or cool or anything like that. It just I don't know. She just reminds me of those kind of boring anime characters that like don't really have too much of a personality, right? Um, in terms of her utility in game, I'd probably put her in B tier because I would say that the main selling point of Fischl is that she is basically an off-field support character in the fact that you summon Oz and then you swap out. Like you just swap to another character, your primary DPS or whatever. Like you I would say that you don't need to have her on the field for a long time, and I would even say that you shouldn't have her on the field for a long time. Literally just proc Oz and, get her off the field is what I would say. So utility wise, her Oz is like her main selling point. If you invest into her and you have like a C6 official with good leveled talents and artifacts, and her Oz can hit really hard with electro damage, then she's fantastic as a support character. But for me, overall, combining, character design as well as combat and utility, I'd say B tier for her. Ganyu. Ganyu, Ganyu, Ganyu. Yes, now we are reaching the I guess the top tier of the game, you know, the hype characters. Ganyu for me. Okay. If I were solely basing this tier list on character design only, like personality, visual appearance, that stuff, S tier automatically for Ganyu. That's what I would say. However, my one big issue with Ganyu, the reason why I didn't pull her the first time, and also the reason why I do not think I will ever pull for her, even if she does come back on reruns, is that she is a bow character. I personally, I do not like bow characters at all. Like, it doesn't matter whether their focus is charged attacks or whether it's normal attacks, right? I do not care for it because I think what it is that when I see a bow character being used on field, to me, it looks like they are basically taking a toothpick and throwing a toothpick at the enemy. And my brain, you know, kind of taking it out of context of Genshin, looks at that and is like, how the heck is a tiny toothpick gonna deal so much damage against an enemy, right? Like, obviously, you build your Ganyu right, she is like the most powerful DPS in game, especially long range, right? But in my head, I just see it, I'm like, you're shooting a single arrow. You think a single arrow is going to deal, like realistically, if you were to take that and apply it to real life, a single arrow is not really going to do anything. It's going to like poke someone, and that's it. Um, so yeah, I like while I do love Ganyu's design and her personality and everything, like she's so adorable as a character. I do not I do not feel that I need her on my account, right? So I'd say combining character design as well as combat utility, Ganyu would probably be for me, I'd say at most A tier on the list. But obviously to a lot of other people she'd go up in S tier or whatever. I don't know. People can make their own arguments against mine. So yeah, that's where I stand. Hu Tao. For me, I love Hu Tao. I have sort of a bias where, you know, I love her character design, I love her personality. Um, I also like her combat style in the fact that she uses a polearm, and polearm characters are one of the best characters in the game, I would say, in order to like if you were to compare weapon class types, right? Like I would say the top two are sword users and polearm users. So I have a bias with Hu Tao. However, I'm not gonna get I'm not gonna let my you know yeah, I'm not gonna let my feelings and my inner thoughts kind of skew the opinion too much. Like I'm not gonna let it affect it too much. So I would say, to be fair, I'm gonna put Hu Tao probably in A tier. And the reason why is because the biggest drawback to her is that she is single target. She is not AoE damage. Um, Other than that, I don't think that she has too many flaws. I mean, you could talk about the fact that she's single target. You could talk about the fact that she needs Xingqiu basically to be really powerful. She also probably needs like maybe another healer or a shield character to keep her alive on the team. But other than that, like she's a well-rounded, solid character. I feel like they didn't like MiHoYo didn't screw up when designing her overall kit. Yeah. Jean. I do have Jean. Um, Jean to me. Ooh, this is tough. I'm debating between A tier and B tier. And the reason why is because, okay, character design wise, I like Jean. She's really cool. Like she gives off this very mature, you know, mature adult woman vibes, right? Where it's like she knows how to handle her business and she knows kind of what she's doing with with her life, I guess. I don't know how else to explain it. So I like her character design. Her utility, if you invest into her, she's actually really, really nice. Like she can provide some really, really nice healing. And you know, her like the fact that she can hold four-piece Viridescent in order to buff the rest of your team, that is a big plus. I will say like I don't think that her swirl is really one of her major selling points, but it is there. So I guess that's a plus. Um, yeah, I'd say I think she is slightly better than Fischl, so I'm gonna put her in A tier. I'm gonna put her there. Um, okay, next, Kazuha. Okay. I do not own Kazuha, so I unfortunately have to put him in this tier. But to talk about him, I feel like Kazuha is, I don't know, like he is such a fun character. And like I would say he is the first character that I've played in the game where I tried him out, I tested him out, and like the only thought in my head is I don't care how strong he is or how useful he is. He's just like he's so unique from playing other characters with his E, his elemental skill and his elemental burst is like fantastic. I played him and I was like, God dang it, I want to wish for him. I want to get him. But unfortunately, I wasn't able to because I was saving Primo Gems for someone else. Um, if I did own Kazuha, I think I would throw him in S tier. And yes, that might be, I might be over exaggerating on how good Kazuha is a little bit. I just feel like, you know, combining his character design with his utility in the game, with his combat mechanics and everything, he is the best Anemo character, Anemo support character in the game, right? Um, someone like that you can compare with Jean, with Venti, with like Sayu. Um, he is the best out of that group. Um, yeah, I'll talk about the rest of them later if I don't go into them in depth right now. But yeah, that's my thoughts on Kazuha. Um, Kaya, Kaya is an intriguing character. I do not have him properly built, nor do I think I ever really will, because I feel like he needs constellations to be worthy of investing into as a primary DPS. Um, I know that if you have optimal artifacts and if you have, a good weapon on him, a good team to support him, he can actually deal really good cryo damage, especially off field, with his burst. But I don't know. I feel like he's very mediocre. And I think one thing that plays into it, right? One thing that affects his rating on my tier list is the fact that he is like a character that you get at the very beginning of the game. He's someone that like you start out with and he's given for free. I feel like if he were, you know, more like if he were not given to you in early game and you could pull for him more easily on limited banners and whatever and you could get constellations for him more easily, he'd be he'd be a pretty good cryo DPS option for people who don't otherwise have other cryo DPS characters. But for me, I'm going to throw him in C tier. I just feel like he is he's not bad. He's not really that great either, unless you fully invest into him, of course. Um, next, Ayaka. This one is another one that I'm biased with. I I love Ayaka so much. Like, she is the first character that you could say I got into Genshin Impact. I saw her character. I mainly saw her character from like people that released. This was like back in like version 1.4 or like 1.5 or whatever it was, right? There were people who did the beta test of like when Genshin was first announced and officially released. She was like one of the earliest beta characters that people got to try. And so I saw a YouTube video of Ayaka, right? Um, Thanks for sticking by. Got no nitro. Yeah, thanks. I appreciate it. Hopefully you have a good rest of your day, night, so on and so forth. Um, yeah, so I first saw Ayaka, and my immediate thought was like, I have to have her. Like she is so good because of her character design and her personality. It was one of those thoughts where I was like, I really do not care, if she ends up being bad or good or whatever, whether she has a place in the meta or whether she doesn't. I really didn't care. So I did save up for her, and I do own Ayaka, and I'm very glad that I do own her. Um, I really want to throw her in S tier. The only reason I won't put her in S tier, I'll put her in A tier, and the reason why. So the I think the big downfall with Ayaka is the thing that like, okay, a lot of people I've seen who play Ayaka or at least own her, even if they don't really use her that often, they always talk about how her dash is really annoying. Now, in my opinion, I personally don't have any issue with it. Like, the most that I could complain about is the fact that, like, her dash consumes stamina. But that's how dashes work for every character. They consume stamina, right? Unless you have like a constellation or a talent or something that saves or reduces stamina usage, right? So a lot of people complain about Ayaka's dash, and I understand why they complain about it. So because of that, in the interest of keeping this fair and square of a tier list without letting my personal feelings affect it too heavily, I'll throw her in A tier. But in my heart, her as well as Hu Tao are both S tier characters, right? That's just that's just my preference. So yeah, moving on, Kaching. Kaching, I do own her. She is C0. Um, I personally really like Kaching. I like her character design. I like her combat, right? And here's the big I think the big, I don't know, controversy with Kaching, right? So, first of all, you can mention the fact that in the game, it is very noticeable that Electro characters are not really the strongest, right? Like, um, out of the different elemental types, Pyro and Cryo are probably the top two elemental types right now. And then after that, you have like Anemo, you have Electro, and you have Hydro, right? As well as Geo. And it's like, so you first mentioned that fact where it's like Electro characters kind of get the short end of the stick in the game. And then you also can talk about how like a lot of people they say that when you play Kaching, the optimal way to play her is to what's it called? To rely on her charged attacks, right? And that's like where her like the majority of her damage is supposed to come from, other than like her burst, obviously. Um, and the thing is that like people complain how if you solely rely on her charged attacks, she consumes stamina at a very fast rate, and therefore, like, there is a limit to how much damage she can deal, in a fight. Um, my personal opinion, so Kaching was like, I think the very first 5-star character that I ever got in the game, and I used her a little bit. I never properly built her, but I did use her. Um, the way that I like to play Kaching is, first of all, I like I basically never used her charged attacks because they consume stamina, and if I don't have stamina, I can't dodge, I can't maneuver around the battlefield. So I would focus on her normal attacks. I would use her skill to infuse her normal attacks with Electro, and I'd use that. And then I would say the majority of my damage would come from her burst. Now, obviously, I didn't have her properly built at the time, especially since I was early game, so she was mediocre for me. But I feel like if I could invest into her and if I could play her the way that I played back in early game, mid game, I would really enjoy using her. So my personal, ranking of her is probably a lot more positive than other players. A lot of other players like to hate on Kaching a lot, which I feel is kind of unfortunate. But I'll go ahead and throw her in B tier just because I recognize she has flaws. She's definitely not A tier material, and she's definitely not S tier material, not even close. But I do feel like when built properly, she can be a viable DPS, Now, Klee. Klee is someone I do not own, unfortunately. Honestly, I like Klee's character design. I like her personality. She is like, basically, she is that one adorable anime character that you want to give head pats to. That you want to like, I don't know, you just want to see them be, very fun, energetic, childish, just let them let them go and explore the world and have their fun, right? Like Klee is such an optimistic, happy character that I cannot dislike anything about her. Now, utility wise in the game, I think that I've heard people say Klee has kind of a very, I don't know, maybe clunky, maybe like tricky playstyle with regards to like how you use her normal attacks, her charge attacks, so on and so forth. And then also on top of that, there's the fact that she easily got power crept by other DPS characters, Um, so unfortunately, she's not really meta in the game, but she's like, her character design is so nice that like honestly, if I do ever end up pulling her from a limited banner or whatever, I don't know, maybe they might update the standard banner at some point in the future. But if I do end up ever obtaining Klee, I think I would basically just invest into her for fun and for enjoyment rather than like trying to build her to be super strong and to be able to tackle like abyss content or anything like that. I just build her just to you know, enjoy my time throwing bombs at fishes and enemies and whatever, kind of just go bomb blasting and whatever. Um yeah, I'd say giving her a fair rating on this tier list in terms of like her utility and everything. If I did own her, I'd probably throw her in like B or C tier is where I think she'd probably belong. But she's very 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 adorable as a character. Next we have Sarah. She is one of the newer 4-star characters. My opinion, I'm gonna go ahead and throw her right away there. She goes in this tier with Amber. Actually, I would say that Amber is superior to her. Here's my argument, right? One, character design wise, nothing really stands out about her that like I really like. There's nothing about her where I'm like, wow, that design was fantastic, that personality is fantastic or anything. Like I don't really care about any of that stuff with Sarah. Like she seems kind of bland in my opinion, kind of one-dimensional. Um, Two, if we talk about her combat and her utility, right? I think that out of all the characters in the game, she is either the clunkiest or one of the clunkiest characters to ever play. Because, like, she has that whole mechanic where if you want to get a buff for your team, if you want to, like, basically support your team properly, you kind of need to rely on at least a single charge attack from her. And having her do a charge attack and then like swap out of the aiming mode and whatever and kind of readjust to the normal regular combat style, it's just yeah, it's not good, right? um I feel like it interrupts the flow of combat and it just yeah it I don't understand how players use her. Like I feel that the only optimal use for her is just swap her in activate her burst and then swap out. Like I don't feel like her charged attack with the buff is even worth the time to try and accomplish, right? And I just think like we already have Bennett, and Bennett is like a god compared to Sarah. So like yeah, if you were doing Spiral Abyss and you needed a second Bennett type character for your secondary team, you could use Sara, but like I personally would never do that. Like that's not my thing. And actually, now that I remember, I do not own Sara. I don't think I ever pulled her, so she goes in this tier. But just so you know, I would put her in the sucky tier next to Amber. I am not a fan of her. Next, we have Lisa. Lisa is character design wise, personality wise, fantastic, right? Um, Lisa is basically the same as Beidou. She's got the really nice mommy vibes. You know, she's got the um elderly, you know, adult woman kind of energy about her that I really do appreciate, right? I love that about her. So if we were just solely going based off of like waifu-ness, I guess is that even a word? I'd place her high on the tier list. But because of the fact that she's a starter character and you know she's not really like, I think that she can be built to be strong, but she requires very, I would say very heavy investment to get to that level. She requires, you know, constellations, talents, and good artifacts and a good team, you know, more so than other characters really do in order to get her to the same level as other 4-star characters and 5-star characters, for like DPS purposes or whatever. Um, I think I'll throw her in C tier along with these two other characters. And notice how like all these three characters are ones that you get at the very beginning of the game, so there's some correlation there. Um, Mona. Um, Character design wise, personality wise, probably an A tier or S tier. She I don't know, man. Like whoever at MiHoYo was designing this character, they piled on the thick is what I'll say. They did justice to the body proportions, I guess you could say. Um, as for her utility, this is an interesting one. I think that Mona, I would say that Mona is really good for permafreeze teams. Like she can also be really good for vaporize teams or other elemental reactions, but I feel like, you know, for like vaporize for example, you could easily replace her with a Xingqiu, and Xingqiu would probably work better, right? For the team overall, with the amount of utility that he provides. But the one selling point of Mona is that she has that omen buff that like increases your character's damage whenever you do use her burst. So if you can build her properly, she can be a really good strong support character. Um, I think I'll probably throw her into, I don't know. I'll probably throw her into A tier, but like, yeah, she's like tiptoeing the line between A and B. Um, yeah, I don't know. Like Omen buff and then character design, good. Otherwise, she's not really amazing. Like her hydro application is not the best, and she doesn't really have any other benefits that she provides to the team or anything. Ningguang. I really like Ningguang's character design. I like she's kind of similar with Beidou in that like she has that very adult, mature vibe, you know, to her. Um, and yeah, I think that like early game, she was one of the characters I used a lot as a, I would say like a semi DPS character. Um, but eventually, once I started getting more and more other like characters, especially 5 stars, I eventually swapped her out of the team. Um, I think the downside to Ningguang is that uh, her playstyle to me kind of clunky. Not as bad as like Sarah, not as bad as some other characters, but like I don't know, like basically when it comes to her normal and charge attacks, for those who don't already know, you essentially need to focus on animation canceling, where uh like whenever you do use her normal and charged attacks, you need to be like constantly moving. So like you need to either be pressing W, A, S, or D while you are attacking with her in order for you to like shorten the amount of time that her animations take. And I feel like it's kind of wonky to use her because from what I've experienced, there are many times where I'll click my mouse 2 or 3 times and then I'll hold down my mouse in order to activate her charged, but for some reason, I guess like the speed at which I'm doing it is too fast for the game to register, so her charged attacks they don't properly activate. Like she literally just stands there after using 2 or 3 normal attacks, right? So she's a bit tough to use. I think I'd probably throw Ningguang in C tier. She has potential, especially at C6. She can be a good DPS that, could be comparable to a 5 star, but overall, my opinion of her, I'd say C tier. Maybe low B tier if you consider her character design more heavily on the rating. Noelle, I mean, this is kind of a meme, but I'd throw her in S tier, like, automatically. I think the reason why is just because I love her personality and her character design so much. Like, even though I knew she was not a viable, great character when I first started the game, after talking to people and learning more about how she is as a character, I really liked her personality. It was just so, it was very, I don't know if tsundere is the right description of it, but it's like, it was just very kind and very, gentle of a personality. So I really liked that. I really enjoyed it. But in terms of like utility wise, she's not great in game. Like she can provide a shield, and that's basically the best of her abilities. Maybe if you have her at C6, she can deal damage, but like why would you really use her even at C6? Unless you are like a hardcore uh, Noelle, fan, and you're just like, you're a ride or die fan of her character. So I'd probably throw Noelle. I throw her in D tier, I guess. Like I really do like her character, so I wish I could put her higher, but yeah, unfortunately that is how it is. Chi-Chi. I do not own Chi-Chi, so go ahead and slap her there right away. Um, Chi-Chi is a character that I don't know. Essentially, I think at the point we are at right now, version 2.2, almost at 2.3, Chi-Chi is one of those characters that like she came into the game and she lost her relevance. She lost her place in the game very, very early on. She got power crept so darn fast and like it's so copium to use her nowadays. Like, I think that before a character like Kokomi, you could make an argument for using a Chi-Chi for the healing, but yeah, it's just she's widely agreed upon within the community. She's widely agreed upon to be like one of the worst 5 star characters to exist. Um, I will say though, on the plus side, her characteristics, her like personality, I really think is funny. It's hilarious because she's like, she looks like a child, but she's in fact this like, you know, essentially a zombie character who's been living for what, hundreds of years, maybe thousands of years. Um, and she has like this like very monotone, personality to her where she's like, it feels like she's eternally tired and eternally sleepy. And I really like that personality trait of hers. It is very comedic in my opinion, and I like it. But other than that, uh, I'd say she'd probably go in the sucky tier with Amber if I did own her. Soft spot for Noelle. Yeah, yeah. Like early game, Noelle's shield, lifesaver, along with Barbara's healing. Heck yeah, these two, they would literally like carry you through early game for survivability. Yeah. Next, Raiden Shogun. Um, Raiden, I really like Raiden's design. I think that she is a very pretty, very beautiful looking character, and I really do enjoy her design, her personality. Getting to learn more about her in the story was very, educational, very also fascinating to learn about. I liked her story. Um, what was really funny is I remember I was speaking to another Genshin Impact player, and we were talking about Raiden. This was like when it was like slightly before her banner was officially released. And there was like a little bit of an inside joke that was made where the Genshin Impact player I was talking to, they said, why the heck would anyone enjoy Raiden's like visual appearance or design? Because like the person said, realistically, if you were to look at people in real life, no one wears a kimono and wears like leggings or stockings with it. They don't wear the super long tights or whatever it's called. I think they called it pantyhose or something like that. But I'm just gonna call it leggings or stockings because I have no clue what the heck the difference is. Um, so that was like an inside joke, and I remember a couple times after that, I told this specific person that I was talking to, I was like, "Yeah, I'm pulling Raiden," and I was like, "What better reason do I have than to pull for someone that wears a kimono with leggings like that? That is fantastic in my opinion." And obviously, it was a halfway joke, but yeah, no, I really like her design. Uh, Combat wise, utility wise in the game. I think the most disappointing part about Raiden is that she does not synergize with Beidou. Like, if she did synergize with Beidou, she could easily be A tier, S tier, Easily, no doubt. That big flaw brings her down a bit. And then also another thing is that, like, I was kind of hoping she would be a sword user, like primarily a sword user, rather than a polearm user who has a sword ability. So that's another kind of small flaw with Raiden. But I think that judging her for her like utility as sort of a, you know, burst support character, someone who, you primarily swap in, you use her burst, and you attack with her for a short duration, short period of time. Um, like assessing her based on her strengths, I feel like she could probably go up in A tier as a character supporting the team and also dealing a little tiny bit of DPS, if built properly. Um, I'd go ahead and throw her there. That's my rating of her. Yeah. Next, Razor. Razor, I own him. I do not use him. I think I would throw Razor in D tier. And I know that this is gonna hurt the Razor players, especially people like I know that TSoul is a Razor player on at least one of his accounts. Like Razor is his primary DPS, his main DPS. So sorry TSoul, sorry to everyone out there who does play Razor. I just feel like within the game, like okay, speaking of Genshin Impact as a whole, I think that one of the cool things about the game, one thing that is like a selling point, is the fact that you have so many different elements and so many different like combinations of reactions and teams and whatever that you can use to clear content, right? So the way that I see it is that like characters that are heavily reliant on physical damage, like that type of combat style, it's just so boring to me. I like even if it can be strong, even if it might be strong, like it just I don't know. I play it and I'm like, man, I don't have any enjoyment, doing this. So, like, yes, while Razor does have electro attacks, right? He is more heavily leaning towards the physical damage side, and so I feel like with him he's kind of bland. Um, and also character design wise, I don't really care for him. He's like essentially what I would, like what I would relate him to is kind of like a caveman character, like a berserker caveman type, you know, personality and characteristics. So yeah, D tier for me. Rosaria. I do have Rosaria. I do use Rosaria a bit on my teams, mainly for like raising her friendship level. I really like Rosaria. I think she's a cool character. She has nice abilities. Um, Pretty decent cryo application. Not the best probably, but pretty decent. Um, I would say, yeah, I would say she could fit into B tier. She has a lot of, you know, plus sides to her that I recognize and I'm like, you know what? She she has utility that she can provide to a team. She has some usefulness that she can, you know, use to help uh boost her team and make her team stronger, better, so on and so forth. Um, yeah. I'd put her in B tier in terms of character design, personality. I like it. Can't really say too much. Like she's got that kind of I don't know. She's got that vibe where, on the outside she's a tough person. She is a no nonsense kind of, serious type of person, but on the inside I feel like she's a soft little teddy bear. She just has like a soft spot for the people she cares about, right? And she may not necessarily show her emotions that easily and that openly, but you know, um, she's she's a very likable character, I can say, Um, yeah, so B tier she goes for me. Kokomi. Unfortunately, I do own Kokomi. Sadly. I wish I didn't. I wish that she never even came close to my account, but I got unlucky and I ended up pulling her. Kokomi, don't think there's too much to say. She's gonna go in the sucky tier. Um, her healing abilities are pretty good. Hydro application, pretty good. I'd say it could even surpass Mona's hydro application, but um, yeah, the fact that like she has that negative 100% crit rate stat and yeah, also, the fact that like outside of healing, she really doesn't offer anything else to the team. You know, I I have to put her low on the list. Like she doesn't deserve to be up anywhere higher on the tier list, unfortunately. Um, Character design wise, she's pretty. I like her personality and her visual appearance and whatnot. But yeah, I unfortunately her looks are not enough to redeem her lack of utility, lack of usefulness in terms of team compositions and whatever. Like there's not really a team that needs Kokomi. I think the biggest benefit that she can provide is she can heal your team in order to survive the Bloodhound creatures that were introduced in Inazuma, the ones with the corrosion mechanic. But I feel like with a combination of other healers as well as maybe a shield character, you can still survive those Rift Hounds and those creatures regardless without Kokomi. So yeah. Sayu. Sayu, character design wise, personality wise, good. Like I like her character. I can relate very much to the fact that I love sleeping, and I am a very lazy person, so I like that. Unfortunately, combat wise, utility wise, lacking. I'd say she's pretty lacking. Like the only thing that she can really do is roll around and travel faster than other characters. Besides that, nothing really too special. I'll probably throw her in the sucky tier because of that. Um, any other healer that you can think of is superior to her. Any other Anemo character that you can think of, superior to her as well. So, yeah, that's basically the end of the argument. Sucrose. Sucrose, I'm gonna go ahead. I'm gonna probably throw her in C tier. Leave her there. Sucrose, I think, is a great Anemo character for crowd control, especially early game and maybe also mid game as well, depending on like where you are at when you consider yourself to be in the mid game range. Um, the unfortunate fact is that like I think if you own characters like Venti and like Kazuha, um, you don't really need Sucrose. You like there's um no reason why you'd invest into her if you have better Anemo characters than her, right? But I do feel like, if you have her with constellations, with good artifacts and whatever, she can be used as a crowd control character, um, sort of like a discount Venti, in a way. Uh, yeah, yeah. I can't put her higher than C tier though because yeah, I mean there you can make do without Sucrose. You don't really need her on any team, right? Character design wise, I like her character. Personality's good, character's good. Her visual appearance is nice, but nothing too outstanding. Nothing about her character where I'm like, wow, that is, very cool or very cute or, very nice or anything like that. So she's kind of in the mid-range, I would say, C tier. Uh, Child Tartaglia. Here's the thing. I don't own him, but I'll go ahead and talk about him a bit. Um, I would say that if you talk to any player who uses Child and Tartaglia, I'm gonna call him Tartaglia because Child is such a weird name to me. If you talk to anyone who uses Tartaglia and anyone who's invested into him who uses him optimally, they will say that Tartaglia is like an actually very strong character. Like I've seen people place him in A tier and S tier and whatnot, right, on tier lists. Um, as for me, I feel like I have a couple of problems with Child. One, um, I'm not a fan of his personality. I like, you know, I mean, okay, I don't hate his character design, his visual appearance, but his personality, I'm not a fan of. And the reason why is because, like, he has that stereotypical anime trope, characteristic and personality where it's like, oh, I am the handsome bad boy. I am the cool looking, troublemaker or whatever, right? That is not a character stereotype or character archetype that I'm a fan of. So there's that. Second of all, um, I'm not a fan of how he is a he's a bow user, which is automatically something that loses points in my eyes, but also that he turns into a sword user with the activation of his skill. Um, that's something I'm not a fan of. I feel like if you're going to give a character a specific weapon class, have them stick to that weapon class. Don't try and do like a split build between two different weapon classes. That's just kind of annoying. Um, and then I think the biggest downside to Child, and here's the thing, like I'm gonna talk about this from my perspective where I realize that, you know, people who play Child and who play him the right way, they like they'll be able to argue against this point and they'll be able to properly refute my argument, right? They'll be able to present a logical counter argument to this, but I'm going to go ahead and say it anyways because I do feel strongly about it. So one of the biggest, you know, aspects of Tartaglia's kit that most everyone knows is that his elemental skill cooldown, it can go it can get to a really long duration. And what that means is like basically the way his kit works, if you press E and you like swap either into your yeah you basically if you swap from your bow stance to your sword stance, it starts like this timer or this counter, right? And the longer that you stay in his sword stance, the longer his cooldown becomes, right? And I believe the maximum cooldown time at C0 is like 40 seconds or 45 seconds, which is like insanely long compared to all other characters in the game. Um, Now, here's like the counter argument to that. Here's the thing that I've seen people say, which is very logical, and I recognize I'm not saying that this is wrong or that this is bad, but it's something that I kind of want to discuss on a deeper level, right? Um, the fact of the matter is that if you play Tartaglia optimally, you are meant to activate his elemental skill, do a couple of attacks using his sword stance, roughly about like more or less 9 seconds, and then you're supposed to swap out and change characters. You're supposed to go to another DPS character or go to a support character, someone else, right? And that way, your Tartaglia's cooldown will not be as long. It will reset and um, it will be in a position where once you swap back into Tartaglia, your elemental skill is finished with like the timer and you can activate it again, right? So if you are doing an optimal rotation with Tartaglia, yes, I recognize that like the cooldown is not an issue. However, for someone like me, the reason why I still do not like Tartaglia and do not want to use him is because when like and I know that this is me. This is just like primarily a skill issue. It's something that I struggle with and it's something that like I basically need to put in the time and effort to improve if I want to. Is that when I play the game and I am in the middle of combat, my finger, my index finger is like always uh basically always continuously pressing on the E key to activate elemental skill, right? Like I'm very trigger happy with the E key, right? Because I want it to be where, you know, on my characters every time that their cooldown comes to an end and their elemental skill is usable again, I want to immediately activate it. I don't want to lose any time, right? So in the middle of combat, I am consistently and constantly pressing the E key to make sure that my uptime is as much as possible. Um, the problem is that with a character like Tartaglia, every time you press his E, you switch his stance, and it also screws up his cooldown because obviously the more that you switch back and forth, the more it extends the duration of his cooldown. So for me, just because I'm in the habit of basically continuously pressing the E key, um like if I were to use him, it would be like such a huge adjustment for me to change my combat style in order for me to like train my fingers to not automatically press keys, you know? And it's just not something that I'm willing to take the time and energy and effort into modifying, right? Like, because so far in the game, Tartaglia is the only character that has this type of ability with his elemental skill. No one else has it where like, you know, depending on how many times you press the E key, you might screw up the rotation, you might screw up the timing or whatever. He's the only character. So my logic is like, why would I change? Why would I modify my entire playstyle just to fit his character, you know? So I'm like, no, not even worth it. I would say, you know, judging his utility, his combat usefulness in the game, his personality characteristics, where would I place him if I owned him? I'd probably say maximum. I would say, just to be lenient, A tier is where he would go. But I would not put him in S tier. I would not put him in S tier. I would even go so far as to say like he might be just high, very high B tier is what I'd put him as, in my personal opinion. I know that for other people, he is a lot more OP than that, and I'm not saying that he's a bad character in any way. So, yeah. Toma. Toma is like basically the newest 4-star character that we have as of 2.2. He is a character that I just unlocked today, actually earlier in the stream if you were paying attention. Um, Based on what I've heard about his combat usefulness, his, um, utility on a team and whatever, uh, yeah, yeah. Um, so based on what I've heard about Toma, he's not really anything special. Like, what I understand is that he has essentially one specific character that he synergizes with and that he can go on a team with, and that is Hu Tao. But outside of that, there is no team that like wants Toma or that needs Toma. He's like very easily replaceable, right? But I guess like if you need a shield character, if you need someone to apply pyro, then I suppose you can use him. He's not the worst. So go ahead. But like I just think that in terms of his build and like his overall kit, um, yeah, it's like, you know, I feel like he's a really wonky character to build because he needs a lot of energy recharge, and on top of that, like I think there's been talk about how his ascension passive is like crit, not crit, it's like attack percentage or something. So it seems like he's meant to be an attack character, someone to deal damage, but the problem is that like his flaws and whatever that come with his build, it doesn't allow for you to build him as like a proper full DPS without sacrificing something important like his shield strength or his, support utility or whatever. So he's kind of a meh character. I'd put him in D tier. I will say, in terms of his like characteristics, personality, just like his design as a whole, I like his design. I think he's pretty cool. I like him a lot more than Tartaglia. Like you can compare these two because they look very similar and they kind of have a little bit of similar vibes to them. But I like Toma a lot more because he's not very egotistical. He's not very self-centered compared to Tartaglia. So I'd say I like him better. But overall, I'd put him in D tier because not really necessary. But yeah, no, T with bears. Yeah, I completely agree with your point. Like when I'm playing, especially like I would say even in Spiral Abyss, but especially in like overworld content, I don't want to like have to continuously do mental math in my head just for a single character like Tartaglia in order to calculate, his optimal rotation and playstyle and blah blah blah. Like I'm a lazy person. I don't have the mental energy to do that, right? I just want to play the game for fun and enjoy using characters. So yeah, I completely agree with you. Now, Traveler. Okay, so I will say the thing is, so as of 2.2, there are three different versions of Traveler. There is Anemo Traveler, there is Geo Traveler, and there is Electro Traveler. My personal opinion, um, I would say that Anemo Traveler, I'd probably put her or him, depending on if you use Aether or Illumine. I would put Traveler at C tier for a Nemo, right? I feel like a Nemo Traveler is like actually very useful early game, especially. Um, and it is especially true if you like do not own Sucrose or you don't have a Sucrose built properly, right? Um, the burst attack on a Nemo Traveler, um, and I guess also as well the elemental skill, like pretty darn good for crowd control. Um, Not obviously not one of the top Anemo characters in the entire game, but good for early game, maybe mid game as well. Now, if you were to talk about um, Geo Traveler and Electro Traveler, Geo would probably be the second best elemental type of the Traveler so far. However, I personally don't think that Geo Traveler is that amazing. If I had to rate Geo Traveler, I'd probably say D tier, or maybe even sucky tier. Because, like, at least for me, I don't really. There's no part of Geo Traveler's kit that I like need on a team, right? If you like, for example, you need someone to deal geo damage or and or like provide geo resonance on a team, you have Ningguang. You have even Noel could do the job, right? And Noel has a nice helpful shield. um, yeah, so I just feel like Geo Traveler not that amazing. And then last of all, Electro Traveler. Biggest problem with Electro Traveler, they are useful as a battery for funneling energy particles to other characters. Other than that, they like they basically deal zero damage. It's like hitting the enemy with a soft pillow. Like they Electro Traveler doesn't do anything, unfortunately. Like it useless basically. So, if you need a battery for an Electro character, sure, I guess you could use Electro Traveler, but there's also a bunch of other Electro characters you could use as batteries, especially Fischl, really good Electro battery character. So, yeah. Um, Electro Traveler, I'd probably put, if I put Geo Traveler in D tier, Electro Traveler would go in sucky tier. Um, yeah, that's just how I'd put it. Venti, do not have Venti, do not own him. Okay, here's the thing. I recognize how strong Venti is, and I recognize how good he is in the game. Many people making their tier list would probably throw him in S tier automatically. Many people would, at minimum, I don't think anyone would place him below A tier. Here's the thing. I recognize that he is a strong character. However, for me, there are two downsides. First of all, I'm not a fan of his character design and like, how he is, as a person and whatnot. Like I'm just not a big fan. He kind of has the I don't know, the more like I'm not saying this in an insulting way. I'm just saying it in a factual way, like observational way. I see it. He has more like feminine characteristics than most of the male characters in the game, and it's just like it's not a characteristic that I'm a fan of, right? It's just not something I dig. Um, so, yeah, I would say not a big fan of his characteristics, personality. He's kind of a goofy character, and then second of all, he's a bow user. I do not like bow users. Pretty sure I've made that crystal clear throughout the stream. Not a big fan of his bow. And then also like I just feel like his number one like I would say his number one selling point is his burst. Obviously after his burst you have his elemental skill, which is also nice, but his burst is the main thing that like people utilize him for, right? Um, yeah, and I just feel like combining his, utility along with his like character design, I'm not a huge fan of him overall. Again, I recognize he's strong. I recognize he's great. Me personally, I would, if I did own him, I would not throw him above A tier. He would probably stay at like the low end of A tier just because I dislike some parts about him. That's my own personal opinion about him. Xiangling, I'm gonna go ahead and throw Xiangling in S tier. This is where I'm gonna put her. And let me kind of give an explanation. Xiangling, first of all, you get her very early in the game. That is a benefit. That is a great thing. Second of all, her characteristics and personality, very nice. I think she's like such a very cheerful, optimistic person. She also knows how to cook really well, and she just has like this very cheerful vibe around her. You know, she's a very fun-loving character. Um, yeah, so I like that about her. You get her early in the game, which is really, really good because the thing is that, like, I would say out of all of the characters in the game right now, she is probably one of the top characters that, like, they they have not decreased their usefulness and their utility in the game over time. Like, you know, when you talk about gacha games, generally speaking, and especially in the sense of Genshin, you have um, characters that they release and maybe at the beginning they're strong, but then over time they get like power crept, their utility decreases, and more content comes out where it's like, oh, I need to use a separate different character instead of them. So it's like their um, their versatility in the game drops, right? Normally with characters. With Zhongling, it actually is the opposite. I think as time goes on, she gets more and more powerful, more and more versatile, more and more adaptable to the game. Like, I think that even if you used her in the early game and then you got other 5-star strong characters in like mid game or whatever, it doesn't matter. You can still continue using Xiangling from early game to mid game to end game. Like, she is just that good with the fact that, like, she has Guoba, which is a pretty good elemental skill that applies pyro. It also provides like a damage bonus with the chili pepper left behind if you have constellations for her. And then obviously her main selling point is that her elemental burst provides AoE pyro damage, right? Um, like, it's just, she's so good because she's a character that you can invest like little resources into, and yet she can, like, the result of investing even a tiny bit into her is magnificent, right? Um, and then also, like I mentioned before, and also like you said, Tea with Bears, she's a character where even if you don't focus on building her all at once, you can build her slowly over time, and even if you reach the endgame stages, once you do have a fully built Xiangling, man, she's a powerhouse, right? So S tier for me. Yeah. Xiao. Okay, I do not own Xiao, so I'll put him here automatically. Xiao is an interesting character, right? Um, I will be honest, when he first released and they had like the whole trial run and everything of him, I tried him out and I was not really too impressed with him, right? Because I felt like, you know, I felt like his playstyle, having to rely on plunge attacks, I felt like it was very, I don't know, like I felt like the playstyle was very, I guess, slow in a sense, right? Because in my head, I would think like, oh, you spend all this time jumping up in the air, floating for like a second, and then, slamming down. And then you jump up again, and then you float for a second, and then you slam down, right? I felt like it was, one, a slow playstyle compared to like continuously hitting the enemy, and two, I also felt like it was a very boring playstyle where like you just literally jump up and down, up and down, up and down, right? It's nothing fancy, nothing cool, you know? Um, I will say, like, over time, my opinion on Xiao has changed. Like, I now see Xiao as like a really strong, very capable and viable DPS character. He is easily A tier, and he could potentially be put in S tier depending on, personal preference and whatever. Um, I just will say, like, as a combination of, his utility in the game, um, you know, mixed with his design as a character, I personally don't see him above A tier. He's like really good, but I like S tier to me are like the actually really special characters, and Zhao is not really that special in my eyes. Um, he's just like the most powerful Anemo DPS character because he's like basically the only Anemo DPS character that really exists in the game, you know. Um, yeah. I will say though, like the big plus side to Xiao, if you build him correctly, if you invest properly into him, is that he deals AoE damage, and he has a pretty decently large AoE radius, large area where his attacks hit, to where he can um, like kill most enemies pretty easily. I think the only enemies that he kind of struggles against are the like abyss mages that have the shields. Like the shields aren't really that easy to, you know, knock down with only using a Nemo tax, right? But he can still do it. Like obviously give him enough time, he'll break through the shield. So I'd say for me, he would go A tier at the highest. I would not put him above A tier. And honestly, I think it would be probably criminal if I were to put him in B tier or lower. So yeah, that's what I think of him. Xingqiu, automatic S tier for me. Just let's go ahead and slide him up there, keep him up there. Xingqiu, okay. I think that in the game for support characters, right? I think that Xingqiu and Bennett are probably the two strongest support characters in the game. Like, no competition, no questions asked, right? Like, the utility that they have in the game is so comparable to the level of a 5-star character. You could even say like they are superior to some 5-star characters in the game. Like that's how good they are. And the adaptability, the versatility of their kits, oh man, it's magical whenever you have these two on your team supporting your DPS characters and whatever. Just fantastic support characters. Um, I will say, kind of similar with Bennett, Xingqiu, like his character design, his looks, his visual appearance, not that special, not that unique. Don't really care for it. And also, he's kind of got that he's got that venti vibe going, where he's more of like a, I don't know, soft, um, I don't know, kind of soft spoken, kind of soft personality, male character, someone who's like a little bit more on the feminine side, but you know, he's not as bad as Venti in terms of that personality, that characteristic. So, yeah, not much really else to say about Xingqiu, S tier character in my eyes. Jinyan. Uh, I'm probably gonna get a lot of hate for this. I probably am, but I'm gonna throw Shinyan in the sucky tier. Like my personal opinion, like Shinyan, you can make an argument for D tier, but I don't think she can go anywhere above D tier. I'm sorry. Like that's just unfortunate, you know. Um, Here's the thing. I know Genshin players, especially like content creators who have chosen to build up Xinyan to be a strong character. Like I know that she can be built to be someone who is actually like useful for a team and can hit pretty hard with her attacks, you know? Um, it's just like yeah, it's a combination of her overall utility compared to other characters, as well as her visual appearance, her character design as a whole, that I put her so low. You know, I think that, you know, um, I don't know. Like, I have to be careful with what I say. I have to be careful with the words and the language that I use because I don't want to get a lot of backlash about this. You know, it's not something that I want to start an internet war about. It's not something that I want to start drama about or anything like that. So I have to really watch what I say. I guess the way that I would phrase it is that, okay, I have no issue with the fact that, like, you know, Shin Yan is a, like, an ethnically diverse character who has a, I think it's a like a Southern American accent or something like that, you know? She has this like different accent that is like foreign to Southeast Asia, right? Like she doesn't sound like a Southeast Asian. I have no issue with that. I'm not saying that's bad. I'm not saying that's a negative thing at all, right? It's just that, like, okay, for example, to kind of talk about this and to maybe help to, get people to understand my point of view. Uh, for those of you who were playing during the most recent event where it involved Tartaglia, it involved Xinyan, and it involved Sara a little bit. It was that event where you went into that domain, the Shiki. What was it? It was like the I don't remember the name of it. It was like Momo Shiki Domain. I don't remember. Something like that. It was like Shiki Taisho Domain something whatever. I don't remember the name. Um Anywho, there was a recent event that involved Xinyan, and it like involved a lot of voice lines, a lot of appearances from her character, right? Throughout the quest and everything. Um the one thing that really it just, you know, I guess you could say it annoyed me is that like basically every scene I saw with Shen Yan, I kind of cringed at it. It was embarrassing, you know? Like I remember there was like at least one point during the quest where she started talking to the like one of the NPC characters in the quest, and she like started talking about like rock and roll and whatever, right? And then all of a sudden, like she says, "All right," and she said something like better better like watch out for the incoming volume or something along those lines, right? And she started like doing this guitar solo on her own, right? Out of nowhere. And in my opinion, I saw that and I like physically, my body, it cringed at it because it was like, it was so out of place and so like just it did not mix with the environment. It did not mix with the current atmosphere and situation and the things that were happening in the quest. It felt so wrong that it was inserted in there, and I was like, I couldn't help but think like, man, this is like I don't understand what they're trying to do with her character. It makes no sense to me, and it's like I just think that I think the best way to explain it is that even if you were to have someone in the real world that is like Xinyan, who loves music, who is ethnically diverse, who has like this Southern American accent, right? And who is like some kind of rock star or whatever, even if you had someone like that in the real world, she would not at all act like Xinyan does. She she would not be as strange with her human behavior like Xinyan is in the game. It doesn't correlate. It doesn't mix in my opinion. So that's like the big problem that I have with her character design and her personality is that there's some kind of what's it called, disconnect, I think, between her and between like the game and the environment and the atmosphere and all that fun stuff, right? So yeah. Now, in terms of her combat, in terms of her utility, I recognize that she can be built to be a strong character. I've seen it happen, especially if you look at a content creator like you look at OK Code. He has an amazingly built Xinyan, probably one of the only really highly invested Xinyan players, right? But one big downside that I see to Xinyan is that the way that her kit is, she's like halfway kind of built as a character who scales off of defense, but then the also like on top of that she scales off of other stats as well. Like I think she scales off of defense mixed with like maybe attack percentage and like crit rate, crit damage, right? So it's like it's very hard to optimally find artifacts to like build her properly because she's so mixed bag, you know, with the different stats. Um, yeah, it's just like that to me, I feel like is a downside. I think that if you have constellations for her, then it's easier to build her more leaning towards the what's it called? The defense build. But at the end of the day, she's just like split scaling, and so it's like quite hard to, you know, build her character to be well-rounded and balanced, you know. So yeah, I would say she goes in this tier for me. Um, Yanfei. Yanfei is an interesting character. I like Yanfei's design, her character design, her personality and everything. Great stuff. Like nothing to complain about that. I think the biggest issue with Yanfei is that she's a catalyst user, and the way that her build is like, you know, it requires that she take up quite a bit of time on field. Like she is not necessarily, yeah, she's not really meant to be a character that you like quick swap in and out of a team. You know, she's meant to stay on the field for a good significant amount of time dealing damage, right? And to me, I don't feel like she is an optimal choice for a DPS when you have other characters that exist in the game. Like, I'm sure that there are dedicated Yanfei mains out there. There are dedicated people that really do enjoy building her up and whatever. I like more power to them. I'm not saying she's a bad character. I'm not complaining about, you know, anything negative about her. It's just that for me and my preferences, I'm not a fan of like Catalyst DPS users, especially Catalyst users that require heavy on-field time. So I would say Yanfei, I'm gonna throw her in B tier because I think that with good investment, she can deal some pretty good pyro damage, but you know that does require her to be kind of your primary DPS on a team, which, you know, I personally look at it and I'm like, why would you ever? But anywho, yeah, B tier for me. Yoimiya. This is a tough one. This is a tough one. I like Yoimiya in terms of her character design. I like her personality. Um, like just visually speaking, she's a great looking character, and I feel like, you know, she had potential, right, to be an even better character than she actually is. But unfortunately, the downsides to her. First of all, bow character. Can't really say anything else, right? Um, bow character, not a fan of bow characters. Also, there's the fact that like she's primarily a single target DPS, if I'm not mistaken. Like I think she might have, if I remember correctly, she has at least one attack of hers that is AOE, but like yeah, it seems like she is like the majority of her build is single target. On top of that, I think that one big downside to Yoimiya is that her elemental skill, where she infuses her attacks with pyro, it's so short-lived. You know, it's like it only lasts a couple of seconds, and like basically, um, the amount of time that you have to wait, uh, after your pyro infusion runs out before you can reactivate her skill, it's quite a noticeable amount of time. So essentially you're either forced to activate her burst during the pyro infusion downtime, or you're required to swap out to a different character. Um, and yeah, I don't like that downtime because then you like, you know, if you build her with a kit that is like focused more on her dealing heavy pyro damage, then when she loses the pyro infusion, she's left with only physical damage. and your physical damage numbers are not going to be that great if you're building her with a pyro, pyro leaning, I guess, overall build. So, yeah, and then vice versa. Like, if you build her as a physical DPS, which is very copium in my opinion, you kind of get the you have to sacrifice the pyro damage when doing that. It's not really easy to build her as a split character between physical damage and pyro damage. So, my opinion is that she's not that great. But at the end of the day, I don't own her, so she's gonna go in this tier anyways. I would say if I had to give her a rating, if I owned her and gave her a rating, she would most likely end up being in C tier for me. She's not bad, but she's also not ideal for anything. Like I would very much rather choose a different character to use on the team rather than her. So, yeah. Um Zhongli, my boy. Here's the thing. I feel like if you are someone who either one, you play on mobile, and or you are terrible at dodging attacks, and you maybe not necessarily that you're terrible, but maybe just that you're lazy and don't like dodging attacks and consuming stamina. I feel like Zhongli is basically the character that you want, like that would fix that problem. He would be the solution to that. In my opinion, I'd probably throw Zhongli up in S tier, just because like his shield is so darn tanky and strong at absorbing attacks that like yeah, it's fantastic. It drastically increases your team's survivability by adding him there, right? Um, on top of that, you can use his elemental skill in order to proc the crystallize reaction and get the temporary elemental shields on your other characters. Um, you can also use him to shred like resistance on the enemies. And if you pair him with like another Geo character, if you pair him with Albedo, for example, then those two can be like a Geo duo power team, on their own, and they can sufficiently support and boost your overall team as a whole. So I personally, I'd put him in S tier. However, I recognize that like, people that dislike Zhongli or that like don't own him and don't really see the need for him, they always bring up the point that like if you don't, have him, if you don't use him, you just need to simply learn how to dodge. Like that's it. That's the basic solution. So I'm fine putting him in A tier. Like I'll settle for A tier, but I do not think he is any lower than A tier. I'd say either A or S. My opinion, he would go in S tier. But for those who think that Zhongli and his shield are overrated, they'd probably put him lower on the tier list. Um, as for Zhongli's like other parts of his kit, right? Um, his elemental burst. I've seen people talk about the fact that like the animation takes so long and it's like, such a time waster and blah blah blah. And I can understand if you're talking in the sense of like Spiral Abyss. However, I think that like first of all, his elemental burst is amazing. It's like dope. I look at it and I'm like, dang, that is seriously cool. Like that is amazing as a burst. He literally throws a giant meatball from the sky. Um, and I feel like, building a, burst reliant Zhongli, someone who is meant to just go on field and spam their burst attack, for like the petrification and whatnot, I feel like that is a fun, enjoyable way to play the game, right? So that's why I rate him higher. And then yeah, I mean, in terms of Zhongli's like characteristics, his personality, and his design, I like him. He's got this kind of wise, you know, elderly man vibe about him, but at the same time, he doesn't look like he is about to, turn to ash and fall to the ground and die. He looks like a healthy young adult male, who just has like a lot of wisdom and a lot of experience in life, right? Um, so I personally like his character design and his visuals and everything. Like I think that both the Japanese voice actor for him as well as the English voice actor for him are superb. Like they did a fantastic job kind of you know bringing the character to life. So, yeah, can't really complain. But this is overall, this would be my, tier list rating, I would say. Um, yeah. Um, I don't know. I'm trying to see if I can. I want to see if I can like type something on screen, but it's kind of hard to. Um, yeah. So for those of you who are watching this and like are wondering what the heck the um what's it called? What the conditions are of like this tier list and how it got to be this way. Um, this is essentially a mixed tier list. It's like characters that I like and that I enjoy, but also characters that are like useful in the game and that like are versatile, are strong, are adaptable, and just like high quality overall. So it's a mixed bag, I'd say. Um, Maybe sometime later I'll do another tier list of like husbandos and waifus just based off of visual appearance only and not um, anything to do with combat utility or anything like that. But we'll have to see. For the time being, I think I'm going to end the stream here. It's been